I am Anna Rothery, Lord Mayor of Liverpool, and you are listening to the Black History Month podcast.
So I'm delighted to welcome Councillor and Lord Mayor of Liverpool, Anna Rothery, today as part of our Black History Month podcast series. My name is Darren Mooney and I'm the Diversity and Equality Officer here at the University of Liverpool. And our podcast series is covering different topics and personal stories relating to Black History Month itself and race equality. So hopefully we'll have some interesting discussion today as we welcome Anna to the university. So Anna, I just let you introduce yourself. I've obviously said a few words, but do you want to just let us know who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name's Anna Rothery. I'm councillor for Princes Park Ward, Liverpool 8, fondly known as Toxteth to those who live there. And I am also Lord Mayor for Liverpool and mayoral lead for race equality.
Great. So you're obviously from Liverpool.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah. So I suppose my first question is, obviously we'll come on to your role as Lord Mayor and as a councillor, but I just wondered what your experiences was and reflection was about how Liverpool might have changed over the years, especially for our listeners who are new to Liverpool if they've just arrived as a student.
Well, I think the physical built environment has changed beyond recognition. However, in terms of the social aspects of the city, and especially for particular groups from diverse communities, there hasn't, unfortunately, been a great deal of change. There's, we still have major issues around employment, access to education, business, etc. And so, certainly it is well overdue. We've now made a commitment to look at those issues in terms of Liverpool City Council, but not in isolation. Obviously, we have to work in partnership. So we're working with our business partners across the sectors, community organisation, charities, etc. And also we will be asking for support from other avenues in terms of funding, capacity building, etc.
Is it obviously my ignorance here about how it all works? Is it very much seen that it's the city's responsibility to try and address some of these issues, or is there a government driving some of these activities?
I mean, I think first and foremost, we're on a journey, and I think the beginning of this journey, which is, we all, accept that it's well overdue, but the beginning of the journey, I think people were looking towards the council, to make the huge difference in terms of race equality and anti-discrimination work. But, the reality of that is that we can't do that in isolation. We do have to work with our business partners and our education. So all our universities. So some of the issues were around, access to universities. We've got amazing universities on our doorstep. But in terms of the local population, access in those places, it's been raised time and time again that we really need to up those numbers. Currently, when we look at the data around equality, it tends to be quite good. But what people don't understand is that mainly from students from overseas. So when we look at the diversity, we may have students from Africa, India, etc. So it doesn't really give a true reflection of the accessibility to universities. So obviously that's something that we have to work in conjunction with universities on. That can't
Yeah.
just be solved by Liverpool City Council. The same with employment opportunities. There are many businesses in Liverpool that employ vast numbers of people, but also Liverpool City Council employs lots of people from the city and the surrounding Merseyside area. So we've made a commitment in terms of our recruitment and selection from diverse communities. We're working with local businesses and businesses across the region to also see what we can do to increase those numbers. And, so it's never going to be a solution just from the local authority. It never will be. But, the one thing I will say is that we do need that political drive. And our elected Mayor, Joe Anderson, is give a firm commitment to being that political driver to bring about this change that we need to see implemented quite quickly.
Yeah, and I think you made some really interesting observations there. If you walk around the university, it does look quite ethnically diverse, but as you say, quite a significant number of those students and staff are what we international staff, specifically from
Yeah,
China. I think we have something nearly like 5,000 Chinese students from our partner university in near Shanghai.
and
So
that's great. We love the diversity.
yeah.
We love students who come from abroad to come and study here. But we would like to see the same kinds of numbers that are coming from the local city
Yeah.
community.
And I think a lot of people don't really realise that the university, I don't think it's technically in Toxteth, but I think Myrtle Street is the
Yeah,
border between Toxteth, and so I don't think many people realise the university buttresses right onto that area of
yeah,
Toxteth.
it does. Yeah. So it's literally on the doorstep of the Liverpool Lake community, and and it has been for many years. But that's it. We want to see an increased numbers of local people, and so there are some really positive initiatives that are being discussed at the moment that should go live next year in September. Working with one of our universities, but we want to open up that relationship with all of the universities across the city.
Yeah, and I think that's is something that has been talked about for many years internally as well as how do we best engage with our local community, and obviously each university has a different kind of community engagement activity,
Yeah.
and I think it is something that it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts a bit later on about what you think some of the steps University of Liverpool itself could take, or members of our staff or students
Yeah.
could take
Yeah.
at the end. So just going back to your role as a counsellor, so was it 2006 you first became
It
a
was,
counsellor?
yeah. It seems an awful long time ago now. Yeah, it was 2006.
So how did you get involved in politics? What's the
Well, I
background?
well, my background was I'd always been employed in various central government initiatives around education and employment. I also worked for Lord Scarman on the first trainee social entrepreneurs programme in the city. And so I'd always been involved in community development. I was the former chair of Granby Toxteth Partnership in 1994 when we were looking at European funding and the impact on inner city and inner city communities. And so I had a bit of a background around community development anyway. But I was really, really frustrated because although the initiatives were really interesting in theory, um, when they actually trickled down, I was so frustrated because the results were always the same. It never, ever, with the greatest of respect, did anything in terms of employment from diverse communities. Even if people attended the training courses, turning that into, tangible outcomes in terms of employment and progression routes was really, really difficult. And obviously, we had very little Black representation within Liverpool City Council at the time. And so, if we don't have a political voice, fighting for change, then, it's very, very difficult to bring about that change. So, that was probably one of the deciding factors for me to be a representative for a community and to give a voice in terms of our wants, needs and aspirations, which were consistently being overlooked by central and local government, in all honesty. And so I think that was the reasoning behind coming into politics. But I also wanted to look at the equality issues. And so not just around race equality, but around, LGBT communities, gender, disability. And so that was the driving force for me. Obviously on the equality strands, no one group can go forward alone. We all go forward together. But what we've learned over the years is that some of the changes, positive changes that have been made under the influence of our Black communities, the trickle down effect to other equality groups have been really positive. And so for me, that was the reasoning behind going into politics. Also because I'm born and raised in Liverpool 8. I obviously have a vested interest for my community. And even though we had European funding and we had a lot going on in the city, we could see certain communities moving forward quite quickly. But we also saw other communities being left behind, persistently left behind. And Liverpool 8 was one of those communities that was persistently left behind.
It's like capital culture, just thinking of it. I first came to Liverpool before capital culture happened, so even before the sort of the building work, and you can see obviously the physical changes. But they did seem to kind of stop as you went up, I think, Proper Hardman Street, the road work stopped and things like that. Is that kind of a true reflection of it? Is kind of very much still city centre related?
It was, and it was very much seen. Liverpool 8 was very much seen like a forgotten community, and we're not on our own in that, because we have communities on the outskirts of the city that also didn't benefit greatly from various initiatives that were put in place. But Liverpool 8's proximity to the city centre, we are literally city centre based. Um, so to see that, deliberate sort of end of any development stopping at, Upper Parliament Street or, Catherine Street or somewhere like that, it was really frustrating to see that. And it was also because of, and also the visibility of the Black community in the city. Even today, we still have issues around visibility. Certainly the visitor economy, our tourists raise this. They say, people come from America, come from the African continent, and they hear about this wonderful Black community, the oldest Black community in the whole of Europe. But they never get over the shock of coming to the city, and the visibility is so poor because we're not represented in employment in the city centre.
Yeah.
So,
And is there an Afro-Caribbean community centre on Upper Parliament Street? Is that
there's
still?
the Caribbean Centre, which is the last vestige of Liverpool 8 Black community. I mean, most of the Liverpool 8 Law Centre, Meow, that dealt with immigration, etc. The Charles Wharton Centre, which was an education centre, and to some extent, the Octagon Building that was, delivering against the access to law, access to sociology, and African studies have all gone. So the Caribbean Centre really is the last vestige of the Black community. And I'm really proud to say that working with the Caribbean Centre Committee and obviously Mayor Anderson, we were able to make sure that the community retained that building. And so they've still been continuing to work from there. And obviously it takes time to build up any organisation. But they've done, they've been a linchpin in terms of the community, and there's been activity there, and they've done amazing work on the site. And so, it's, we need to invest in communities. We need to give communities a sense of self and a sense of place. And Liverpool 8, has got less than most communities in terms of actual physical buildings that can be utilised for, just gatherings, socialising together.
So you've mentioned about your role as equality and race equality lead for the council. What does that entail?
Well, it's identifying the issues, but for me, I'm not a huge advocate of talk shops or even looking at reports that we've got reams and reams of paper on reports that have been done into Liverpool going back, decades, and certainly from when Michael Heseltine came after Toxteth uprising. So, it's not about looking at reports, and it's certainly not about going over old data. We know what the issue is in Liverpool, and we know exactly what the issue is in terms of Liverpool 8. So it's about looking at policies and procedures and structures and looking at how we affect that positive change in a way that can be done in a measured way, because we obviously want to be able to see the progress, but it's also about timing. And so at the moment with Black Lives Matters, it's at the forefront of everybody's mind in terms of equality. And I think to some extent, the fact that we've come through COVID, or we've been under COVID for so many months, we've had that space and time. So people have been off work, people have been working from home. The pace has slowed down somewhat, but it's given us the opportunity to tap into our emotional intelligence and start unpicking, issues like race discrimination and how it actually affects and impacts on people's lives. I think prior to that, the general consensus was, racism and discrimination was awful. But we'd seen so many Black men and women murdered, not, just in the US, but internationally, and even here in the UK. And whilst everybody thought it was awful and, an appalling situation, nobody really had the time to sit down and unpick, what can we actually do about this to affect this change. So I think that for the first time, it's not just been the Black community that have come out and spoken out about this, but we've had, allies from all communities and all different backgrounds who've all agreed that we need to effect change and that there is no place for racism and discrimination in a modern city like Liverpool.
Is there any risk that as the news cycle changes and people do start going back to work, that momentum might be lost, or do you think there's quite a high level commitment at the minute to keep driving through race equality?
From what I can see, there's a really high level commitment, but we also have to be realistic. So we have only got a small window of opportunity to effect change. And so, we've just appointed Tracy Gore, who's going to be chairing the race equality task force. We're also working in conjunction across the Liverpool City region with other members who are dealing with the equality agenda. And so, and we're none of us, as I say, we're looking at reports, we're looking at how, even though we're meeting doing consultation, it's very much about solution based. So we want to see what we can actually implement quite quickly. We want some quick wins, obviously, because we want to show, those who maybe don't think it's feasible or possible that it is. But we also want a long-term commitment to change. So quick wins on their own will not suffice. We need to be changing how we do business across the city long term, and not just as a short term solution, to a long term problem.
Yeah, because I think it was a couple of weeks ago, or it might be last week, that there's a news announcement about adding plaques up on certain streets around Liverpool as part of an education awareness raising about the limits of slavery. And it's really important, but it's very visible and quite something that can be done. But as you say, that's not necessarily challenging the underlying social, political issues, economic challenges that are there. Is there a risk that sometimes those big discussions about street names gets a lot of media attention, but actually it distracts slightly, or do you think that both are important?
All of the issues are codependent. We can't deal with one of the issues in isolation because, imagine what it feels like for a black man or woman to be walking streets that are, proclaiming slave owners who've, are guilty of barbaric treatment of our ancestors. In terms of how that impacts on somebody's health and well-being, mental health and well-being, in terms of that constant reminder, and it's everywhere in terms of slave owners, because obviously the city was built on the finances that were brought into the city from slave traders. So, you can't say that it's not as equally as important as all the other elements. We have to tackle everything once and for all together. So in terms of looking at economic equality and looking at our sense of self, in terms of the plaques and the constant reminders, they're so integrally intertwined that we can't do one without the other.
Do you think the city does enough to commemorate, is probably the wrong word, but mark its involvement in slavery? And it was International Anti-Slavery Day a few weeks ago. It has obviously an International Slavery Museum. Is that enough, or is it more needs to be done?
Obviously, there's always more that needs to be done. But I have to commend International Slavery Museum because they do SRD, the Slavery Remembrance Day, every year, and obviously they've got the International Slavery Museum. But now they are focusing on what do we do next, and the reality is, and I'm quite clear about this, that we are not the sum total of our enslavement. So although there's a place for the museum, there is also a place to start looking at the positive contributions that have been made by our communities over many generations. So should we only depict the horrendous treatment by slave owners, or should we now be making a focus on what we've actually contributed to society in terms of architecture, scientific advancements, and horticulture and all those things? And should we now be telling the story of our ancestry, looking at things like the ancient kingdom of Kush, the black kings and queens, the black Egyptians, etc. Is there a role for that? And I'm really pleased to say that International Slavery Museum are actually focusing on those kinds of issues now. And hoping, I believe, to expand the building, so expand the International Slavery Museum, and to start really working on some very, very positive sort of exhibitions and collaborations with the community to look at the positive commitment and the positive contributions made.
That sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
Just on your role as Lord Mayor, what is a Lord Mayor?
What is Lord Mayor? This is the eternal question. I feel so sorry for people because everybody, and right across all walks of life, background, nobody knows why we've got free mayors. Everybody says, we've got free mayors. Why have we got free mayors? Well, the thing is that we've got our regional mayor, Liverpool City Region, which is Steve Rotherham, and we've got Joe Anderson, who's our elected political mayor. But my role as Lord Mayor is more of a civic role, so it's the first citizen. So basically what I do is I'm an ambassador for the city. So I work with the city, work with community organisations, businesses, educators, right across the board. But I also do welcomes to people who visit the city, ambassadors from other country. If there's any royalty visiting, I do receive them in the city. And international ambassadors who come to the city, I do the meeting and greeting with those. I also do work around equality because that's my theme, equality for all. So last year, at the first year as Lord Mayor, I picked equality for all as the theme. And on my second year this year, I haven't changed that. It's still equality for all. And really, to be quite honest, the equality agenda actually needs 2 years of a Lord Mayor, championing the cause. So I was really, really pleased when I was given the opportunity to be reappointed again till May next year. Because the work that I've been doing around the equality agenda has been, really heartwarming. Meeting with different people across the city, different communities. They've completely embraced me as the Lord Mayor. They're interested. They want to understand diversity. They want to understand about different cultures. And so it's been a really wonderful experience. I didn't expect this kind of welcome, I'll be honest with you. I was a little bit nervous thinking, how well will it be received, the first Black Lord Mayor? And openly speaking about equality, on race equality in particular. But, the response I've had has been really, really positive from everybody.
That's great. So what would be your typical day? So you've mentioned lots of
A typical
networking.
day. I mean, I'm a workaholic, so my days are long days. It's common to do a 12-hour day and then go to an evening event. So, so a typical day is I could be learning sign language, working with our deaf community. Could be working on something around naval anniversaries or something like that. Any of the civic events, because obviously I have to do the civic events every year as well. So, I'm on Sunday, I'm going to be doing the remembrance for the merchants and naval. So it's wide and varied. I can be visiting schools, spending time with our infants, look at the work that they do and answering their questions. And then I could just as easily be doing a podcast around equality or, sitting down working with students from, your university or, working with the Faculty of Law, looking at policy changes in terms of the equality agenda and seeing what can we do around that. So, I mean, it is very varied and diverse, but, it's a wonderful role. And it's stretching me in terms of my capacity. And I like a challenge. And so, I suppose the Lord Mayor's role is what you make of it. You can do as little or as much as you want. But because the equality agenda is so important to me, I am doing as much as I can physically do. Because the time is now for change, it really is. And, after 14 years as an elected member, I want to leave some kind of legacy behind, when it comes time for me to retire. And that legacy has to be around equality in the city.
And you also mentioned that you're the first Black Mayor of Liverpool. Is that the first Black Mayor or the first Black female mayor, or is it both?
No, both. It's actually both, yeah. So we had a lady who was Deputy Lord Mayor, Patrona Lashley, a number of years back. Unfortunately, she passed away and never became Lord Mayor. But no, we've never had a Black Lord Mayor in the history of the city, which is another shocking fact, really, considering we've got the eldest Black community in Europe. But that's changed now. This is not about being the first. This is about, breaking down the barriers so that I'm not the last. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Has the symbolism been quite important, impactful? Do people mention it to you, or is it just, as you say, just one of those things that is now you hope to be normalised in the future?
Well, I mean, the thing is that I was not aware of the role of Lord Mayor and how people just love the role of the Lord Mayor. I was, maybe went into it thinking it was maybe a little bit outdated, outmoded. But the reality is that from what I've seen so far, people just love the fact that you're the Lord Mayor and they want to meet you and they want to talk to you about things. And and obviously some people do mention the fact that I'm the first Black Lord Mayor. And they like to have that conversation about, how does it feel being the first Black Lord Mayor? But as you say, this is the new normal. And as far as I'm concerned, is it really relevant that I'm a Black Lord Mayor? Some might say yes. I say now no, because as the first Lord Mayor, as I said, I won't be the last Black Lord Mayor. So for me, it's about, pushing those boundaries and making sure that the door stays ajar for somebody else to come through in the future.
Great. So we're obviously chatting because it's Black History Month.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask, what does Black History Month either mean to you personally, or do you think it means to the city overall?
I mean, Black History Month is a great time to celebrate our contributions. However, a month is not long enough. And I think we should have Black History Year, and we should do what we can periodically throughout the year at significant points in the year to show our commitment, to diversity and inclusion and equality. So, we do tend to have, civic lectures. So on, we have like the Dorothy Kuya lecture, which is done through International Slavery Museum every year, and they're wonderful. An opportunity to show our arts, talk about our business ventures, talking about import and export. It's a showcase the Black community under Black History Month. But in a modern society, should we need that now? Should we not be more integrated into society anyway, so that we don't need to be doing Black History Month, because it should be there at the forefront for everybody to see and understand? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate, because it's part of my daily job, things like LGBT History Month, National Women's Day, I always think they do focus the mind. So
they do. Yeah, they do.
So I suppose it's about how best to use Black History Month as that springboard, as you say, for the rest of the year, to get the conversation going.
Yeah.
So
I think in terms of our younger people, though, it's fantastic, Black History Month, because it enables our younger people, school age, infants, to see Black role models in a positive light and to understand about the history. Unfortunately, it's not part of the core curriculum in terms of Black history. So Black History Month is probably the only time in the year when people get to understand the reality of Black history and what was actually achieved within, ancient Black communities, rather than the stuff that we always see in terms of enslavement, etc. So I think for our younger people and younger children, it's a really positive thing that takes place during the month of October.
I was going to mention before about coming back to like a couple of key tips. So I just thought this would be a good place to ask them if you had 3 or 4 key recommendations or tips that a student or member of staff could do, either about getting involved in Black History Month or about race equality. I'm putting you on the spot here because I'm not asked this before. What do you think you'd come up with?
Well, the thing is that I'm a huge advocate for mentoring. So, at the end of the day, if you want to get involved and you want to learn more about Black History Month, then, offer your services, whether it's buddying or whether it's a mentoring initiative. Our young children in the Black community need opportunities, something to put on their CV. So, if you want to enter into a buddying kind of system where you can learn about somebody else's culture, and somebody else's history, and at the same time give that individual an opportunity to learn something new, then I'd say that would be a really positive way of doing things.
Yes, fantastic. My last main question is about the Lord Mayor's charity appeal. I thought you might want an opportunity to let people know what it is and how to support it.
Yeah, so my 4 charities are Anthony Walker Foundation, and I think it's quite widely known about Anthony Walker Foundation and the lovely G Walker and the work that she does with our youth in terms of equality and diversity, teaching children about different cultures, and just being a support mechanism for our children, showing them the opportunities and what can be achieved in life with the right support structure around you. And then we've got Amadudu Women's Refuge, which is a refuge for women fleeing domestic violence and their children. And that's a great support mechanism for women who are in, difficulty. Obviously, because of the nature of the work, it's highly secret in terms of location, etc. But they do tremendous work with women. And then we've got Merseyside Somali Association. Merseyside Somali Association is a wonderful charity. They're a very old community within Liverpool, but quite insular in terms of people's understanding of the Somali community. They're very, very self-dependent in terms of everything that they do. They don't tap into much in terms of support or funding, etc. But they're, an integral part of the Black community here in Liverpool. And, I respect the way they work together and they look after their elders. It's just a really nice community. And, what people may not know is that they didn't even have a spoken written language, until 1976. So they have, some difficulties around access and education, and things that we take for granted in terms of supporting our children with homework may be, quite complex and difficult for a community that didn't have a written language till 76. So I chose them because I wanted to showcase that community. And I also wanted to showcase it to funders so that they could understand some of the difficulties that they encounter and consider them for funding, in the future. And then obviously we've got Liverpool City Region Pride. And, Liverpool City Region Pride looks after our LGBT plus community and our transgender community. And they are just adorable. So we do amazing work together. And that's around not just raising funds for the charity, but it's about educating people about diversity and equality. And, so tackling some of the big questions in terms of society and some of the big biases, really, demystifying the perceptions that people have about particular groups. So we do a lot of work around that. And then I also set up the 201 Club, which is to attract 201 businesses, not just across Liverpool or Merseyside or even the Liverpool City region. I've got one of our businesses who are from the Vale of Evesham, and the Growers United, they grow all the produce for the whole of the country. And they joined last year. It's £1,000 joining fee. It's not really about the cash, although that goes to the charities. But this is about, educating employers about recruiting from diverse communities and making sure that there's job vacancies for people from different communities. So it's a whole big conversation that goes on with the 201 Club. So it's not just about the cash, and they are actually wonderful and supportive. We've got both clubs, Liverpool and Everton, part of it, and they've been really supportive in terms of the work that they do around sport in diverse communities, but also about employment, because they are both, two of the biggest employers in the city. And so working with them in terms of recruitment and selection, and more importantly, retention and progression routes as well.
Well, sounds some fantastic charities to support there. What we'll do, we'll include a link in the podcast description so everybody can donate and help you out as well.
That's right. Yeah, get those donations coming in, because we have been, hindered a little bit with COVID. We normally do supper clubs. We get people together. We do great socials, supporting local businesses as well, local restaurants when we do that. But with COVID, obviously, we've had to take a step back somewhat. So we are very much dependent on donations that are made online, etc.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out to speak to us for this Black History Month podcast.
Yeah.
And I hope the rest of the year goes fantastic as the rest of your Lord Mayorship.
Yeah, well, you might have to get me back on later on in the year and let's talk about the progress that we've made. But I'm really optimistic and quite positive about the changes that we're going to see.
Great. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, it was a real privilege to hear from Anna Rothery, the Lord Mayor of Liverpool. She stated that Liverpool still has many challenges ahead. For example, it does have the oldest Black community in Europe, and yet visibility of Black people in the city centre is still really poor. And Anna mentioned that, some of these visitors that the city gets, for example, from America and Canada and so on, they hear about this community, but sadly, it's not represented in employment in the city centre.
Absolutely. I think there's so much in this conversation that I want to go away and think about. I loved what she was saying about how actually do we really need Black History Month itself in this day and age? And what can we actually do to ensure that there's equality and diversity year round? And that's something that I really want to think about. I also think what she was saying about how she might be the first Black Lord Mayor, but one of her key roles she feels is to ensure that she's not the last. And that's incredibly important in terms of what you're saying, Matt, in terms of that kind of underrepresentation within the city at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots in that conversation that hopefully has got you thinking and that you'll be able to reflect on. Please do let us know what you think about the episode. You can tweet us at Live Uni Academy, and you can also find us at eLearnerMatt or at Alexandra_Owen on Twitter.
And as usual, we are really grateful for those who have taken the time to either rate or review our show in your podcast provider's app. So if you're an Apple user, please do take the time to review the show, as it really does help people find us. Thank you. Bye-bye.